The day Earth fell is a memory that haunts me, a fragment of time burned into my mind like a searing brand. I didn't see it happen with my own eyes, but that almost makes it worse. The absence of direct sight left the imagination to paint horrors beyond comprehension. One moment, the communication channels were alive with the hum of life, the chatter of 1,000 voices connecting across space. The next, they were silent. The veil didn't negotiate, didn't warn us. They simply arrived, an impenetrable wall of ships and malice, blotting out the light of our sun. Then, in a single strike of unimaginable power, Earth's beacon winked out. I was aboard the Horizon Forge when it happened, a ship not meant for war but for creation. We weren't soldiers, not even explorers. We were miners, engineers, and builders. The Forge was a self-contained factory, designed to carve resources from asteroids and transform them into tools, machines, and structures. We were humanity's insurance policy, or so they called us, a vessel sent far enough from Earth to remain unaffected by its wars or political instability. But none of us ever imagined we'd be witnesses to the end. The ship's internal systems kept us alive, but nothing could shield us from the silence. That silence was the worst part. No distress calls, no frantic messages, no final goodbyes. Earth and everything on it had been erased as if it had never existed. The few scattered colony ships and stations that had managed to send garbled messages spoke of annihilation on a scale we couldn't comprehend. Humanity had gone from a force that reached for the stars to a hunted species in the blink of an eye. There were 10,000 of us on the Forge, 10,000 souls adrift in the void. We had the tools to survive, but survival felt hollow without a purpose. I was a junior engineer then, tasked with maintaining the plasma drills and ensuring the ore refineries ran smoothly. My job felt small, meaningless even, in the shadow of such overwhelming loss. But deep inside, a part of me clung to the faint hope that humanity's story wasn't over. We had been knocked down, but we weren't out. Life aboard the Forge was a strange blend of monotony and urgency. Every day was the same routine of checks, repairs, and resource management, yet there was an underlying tension, a collective sense that we were running out of time. We didn't know where the veil would strike next, or if they even cared about us. Were we too small, too insignificant to notice? Or were they toying with us, watching as we spiraled into despair? Commander Rowe held us together in those first few weeks. Her voice over the comms was calm, steady, unyielding. She reminded us that we were alive, and as long as we were alive, there was hope. Her words didn't erase the fear, but they gave us something to cling to. And in the cold, uncaring void, even a sliver of hope can be enough to ignite a fire. After weeks of drifting through the cold expanse, we were no longer just survivors, we were the remnants of something far greater. The Horizon Forge had become our entire world, its cavernous halls and industrial decks a fragile haven against the endless void. But survival wasn't enough. We all knew it. The Veil had taken Earth, and every human settlement they encountered was being wiped out. Sitting idle meant waiting to die, and we had no intention of making it easy for them. The first realization came during a routine salvage operation. We stumbled across a derelict human freighter, its hull battered and scorched from a Veil assault. There was no life aboard, just the ghostly remnants of a crew that had fought to the bitter end. Among the wreckage, we found something that changed everything: experimental weapon components. The freighter had been outfitted with prototypes meant for planetary defense, including energy systems far more advanced than anything we had aboard the Forge. Admiral Rowe convened a meeting in the Forge's central command hub, a stark, utilitarian space filled with flickering monitors and the hum of machinery. She stood at the center, her presence commanding despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "We have the tools," she said, her voice resolute. "We have the expertise. We're not going to run. We're not going to hide. This ship was built to forge the future of humanity. Now, it will forge our survival." Her words sparked something in all of us. It wasn't just a matter of survival anymore, it was about fighting back, proving that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the dark. The Forge wasn't a warship, but it had the potential to become one. Our plasma drills, designed to carve through asteroids, could be repurposed into energy weapons. The ore processors could refine metals for armor plating and munitions. Even the ship's massive power core, originally built to sustain industrial operations, held the promise of fueling devastating offensive systems. The transformation began immediately. Engineers, scientists, and technicians, ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, worked tirelessly to adapt the ship's systems. I found myself knee-deep in the process, overseeing the conversion of the primary plasma drill into a forward-mounted energy lance. It was grueling work, filled with trial and error, but every success felt like a step closer to reclaiming our power. Morale shifted as the forge itself began to change. What had once been a mining vessel now bristled with crude but effective weaponry. Shield generators were cobbled together from ore containment units, and our navigation systems were upgraded with salvage components to handle combat maneuvers. But it wasn't just about the technology. Something in us was shifting too. We stopped thinking of ourselves as refugees and started seeing ourselves as fighters. The forge was more than a ship, it was a symbol of defiance, a testament to what humanity could achieve when backed into a corner. The Veil might have taken Earth, but they hadn't extinguished what made us human. And soon, they'd learn just how dangerous that could be. The transformation of the Horizon Forge from a mining vessel into a makeshift warship was nothing short of miraculous, but the real test came when we faced the Veil for the first time. It wasn't a planned engagement they found us, as we always feared they would. Their fleet dropped out of hyperspace with the eerie precision we'd come to associate with their movements. The proximity alarms blared, jolting the crew into action. For a moment, there was silence on the bridge, save for the hum of machinery and the soft crackle of static over the comms. Then Admiral Rowe's voice broke through, calm and steady. Battle stations. This is what we've prepared for. We hold the line. Her words snapped us into focus. It didn't matter that we were outnumbered and outgunned. This was our moment to prove we could fight. I was stationed in engineering, where the real heart of the forge beat. My team and I had spent weeks converting our plasma drills into energy lances, and now it was time to see if they could hold up under pressure. The first Veil ship to break formation came streaking toward us, its sleek, organic hull glinting in the starlight. It fired a volley of searing energy blasts, each one hammering against the forge's newly installed shields. Shields holding at 60%, one of the technicians shouted over the din. My hands flew over the console, rerouting power to reinforce the failing sectors. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I barked orders, my voice almost drowned out by the roar of machinery. The forge retaliated with a burst from the primary energy lance. The weapon, crude and hastily assembled, unleashed a brilliant beam of plasma that cut through the void like a blazing spear. It struck the Veil ship dead center, splitting its hull in a violent eruption of light and debris. Cheers erupted over the comms, a sound that filled me with equal parts relief and determination. But the battle was far from over. More Veil ships swarmed in, their formations tightening as they tested our defenses. We fought back with everything we had, launching makeshift missiles crafted from mining explosives and unleashing swarms of kinetic projectiles from converted ore cannons. Each hit we landed felt like a small victory, a reminder that we weren't helpless. The forge wasn't designed for agility, but our upgraded navigation systems allowed us to outmaneuver their larger ships. Admiral Rowe's tactical brilliance shone as she directed the forge to exploit the enemy's weaknesses, weaving through their ranks and striking where it hurt most. The battle raged for what felt like hours, each second a blur of chaos and adrenaline. By the end, the void was littered with the wreckage of Veil ships, their once imposing presence reduced to smoldering debris. The forge stood battered but unbroken, its hull scarred yet defiant. We had done it. Against all odds, we had survived our first encounter with the Veil, but more than that, we had proven something to them and to ourselves. Humanity wasn't just fighting to survive, we were fighting to win. The forge wasn't just a ship anymore. It was a weapon, a beacon, and a promise we would not go quietly into the dark. The victory against the Veil wasn't just a battle won, it was the ignition of something greater, a realization that we could fight back, that we could turn the tools of our survival into weapons of defiance. The mood aboard the Horizon Forge shifted palpably. For the first time in months, there was hope, not just whispered in quiet corners, but spoken openly and with conviction. We weren't helpless refugees anymore. We were becoming something new, something the Veil would come to fear. The Forge was no longer just a vessel for escape. It became a warship in every sense of the word. Every inch of the ship was evaluated and repurposed. Cargo bays were stripped of mining equipment to make room for more munition storage. Plasma conduits were rerouted to deliver energy to new weapons systems. Every person aboard, no matter their prior role, was given a task in this grand transformation. I spent those weeks in the bowels of the ship, overseeing the installation of upgraded energy lances. The ones we had used in the first battle were functional, but we had learned their limitations. Salvage components from Veil wreckage provided insights into their advanced energy systems. With some clever engineering, we managed to enhance the Forge's weapons, boosting their range and power. It was grueling work, but the sense of purpose that filled the crew was infectious. Admiral Rowe called for a council to discuss the next steps. For the first time, it wasn't just about survival, it was about strategy. She stood at the head of the table, a holographic display of the galaxy's local sector glowing before her. "The Veil think we're scattered and broken," she said. "They think they can pick us off one by one. But we have something they don't expect: unity and ingenuity. If we strike back, we need to do it where it matters." Her plan was audacious: to liberate a nearby human colony under siege. The colony wasn't just a symbolic target, it had resources we desperately needed, and its people were skilled engineers and scientists who could bolster our growing fleet. It was a risk, but one we all agreed was worth taking. The Forge jumped into the system under the cover of a dying star. The Veil had encircled the colony, their sleek obsidian ships forming a blockade. Our approach was anything but subtle. We fired the first shots, plasma lances carving through the void and slamming into the enemy's formation. The Veil, caught off guard by our boldness, scrambled to respond. The battle was chaos, a deadly dance of light and destruction. The Forge's newly reinforced shields absorbed wave after wave of enemy fire, buying us precious time to strike at the heart of their fleet. Our missiles, cobbled together from mining explosives and salvage tech, tore through their ranks with devastating precision. As the last Veil ship exploded, its fragments scattering like burning embers, cheers erupted across the Forge. The colony was saved, its people staring in awe as the Forge descended like an avenging angel. For the first time, humanity wasn't just surviving, we were fighting back. The legend of the Forge was beginning to spread. The liberation of the colony marked a turning point, but it was only the beginning. News of the Horizon Forge's victory spread like wildfire across the scattered remnants of humanity. Refugees hiding on isolated stations, colony ships drifting aimlessly, and even resistance fighters eking out survival on distant worlds began to rally to our cause. The Forge had become more than a ship, it was a symbol, a beacon of defiance in the face of annihilation. The influx of new people brought a mixture of relief and challenge. Engineers, technicians, and scientists from the colony brought invaluable expertise, while soldiers and pilots from other survivors added combat experience we desperately needed. But with the growth came logistical nightmares. The Forge was built for mining operations, not for housing thousands of people, let alone running a burgeoning war effort. Every spare inch of space was repurposed. Cargo holds became living quarters, mess halls overflowed, and maintenance bays buzzed with endless activity. I was tasked with overseeing the integration of new technologies brought by the refugees. They had salvaged Veil components from their battles, pieces of advanced weaponry and shielding tech that pushed the limits of what we thought was possible. One of the most fascinating finds was a Veil power core, compact yet immensely powerful. Reverse engineering it became my team's priority. The core had the potential to drastically enhance our energy systems, allowing for faster weapon recharge times and more robust defenses. The work was exhausting but exhilarating. For every breakthrough, there were setbacks, overloads that sent arcs of energy cascading through the Forge's systems, or incompatibilities that forced us to start from scratch. But slowly, piece by piece, we adapted. The Forge became a hybrid of human ingenuity and alien technology, a testament to our ability to learn and evolve even in the face of extinction. Meanwhile, Admiral Rowe worked tirelessly to unite the scattered remnants of humanity under a single banner. She reached out through whatever communication channels we could establish, urging survivors to join us. Some were reluctant, fearful of drawing the Veil's attention. Others came with bitterness, blaming the Forge for not coming sooner. But most came with hope, ready to fight for a future they had almost given up on. The Veil, of course, didn't take our defiance lightly. Their patrols became more aggressive, their tactics more ruthless. They began deploying larger fleets, hunting us with an intensity that left no doubt they saw us as a threat. Each encounter pushed us to our limits. The Forge's new weapons were powerful, but the Veil's numbers were overwhelming. Every victory came at a cost, and each loss weighed heavily on the crew. But even as the odds stacked against us, we refused to break. The Forge had become a rallying point, a mobile fortress where humanity's best and brightest came together to fight for survival. The Veil had underestimated us, assuming we would crumble in the face of their overwhelming might. They didn't understand what it meant to be human, to adapt, to endure, and, when pushed to the brink, to fight with everything we had. The Forge wasn't just a ship anymore. It was humanity's heart, and it was beating stronger than ever. The Veil's fury was relentless, and their determination to hunt us down intensified with every passing day. The Horizon Forge had become more than a thorn in their side, it was a symbol of resistance that they could not afford to let stand. Their fleets began appearing with chilling precision, each encounter a stark reminder of the odds we faced. Yet every battle taught us something new, each hard-won victory sharpening our edge and solidifying our resolve. We had become experts in adaptation, using every scrap of knowledge and resource to outwit an enemy that outclassed us in nearly every way. The Forge's weapon systems were now a patchwork of human and Veil technology, blending the best of both into a formidable arsenal. Energy lances capable of slicing through Veil hulls with surgical precision were paired with kinetic cannons designed to overwhelm their shields. Our shields, once laughably ineffective against their weaponry, now held firm thanks to the reverse-engineered Veil power cores. But it wasn't just about the Forge anymore. Admiral Rowe had succeeded in uniting dozens of scattered human ships, creating a fleet that moved as one. Each vessel was modified and armed under the guidance of Forge engineers, becoming more than just transport or refuge, they became weapons of war. The fleet, now known as the Phoenix Armada, was a force the Veil could no longer ignore. I'll never forget the day the Veil launched their full-scale assault. We had established a forward base in the asteroid belt of a dead system, using the dense debris as cover while we refueled and resupplied. Sensors lit up like a star going supernova as their fleet emerged from hyperspace, dozens of ships forming a wall of black that seemed to swallow the stars. The Forge's comm channels buzzed with frantic activity as crews scrambled to ready their ships. Rowe's voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. "This is what we've prepared for. Stand together. Fight smart. We are the Forge, and we do not break." The Veil came at us with everything they had, waves of sleek, obsidian ships unleashing torrents of energy that lit up the void. The Forge led the charge, its upgraded energy lances firing in precise bursts that tore through enemy ranks. The smaller ships of the Phoenix Armada darted between the Veil's formations, striking at weak points and sowing chaos. The battle was unlike anything we had faced before. The Veil adapted to our tactics with frightening speed, deploying advanced drones and fighters that tested our defenses to their limits. I was in engineering, my hands trembling as I rerouted power to failing shield sectors and adjusted weapon output on the fly. Every second was a struggle, every system pushed to its breaking point. But we held. For every ship the Veil destroyed, we took down 2 of theirs. For every inch of ground they gained, we pushed them back a mile. The Forge burned like a star in the darkness, its hull scarred but its spirit unbroken. The Veil had underestimated us again. They thought they were facing remnants, stragglers clinging to survival. They didn't realize they were facing the fire of a species that refused to die. The battle in the asteroid belt was more than a fight for survival, it was a declaration. Humanity was no longer hiding, no longer running. The Phoenix Armada, led by the Horizon Forge, had turned a desperate struggle into a rallying cry that resonated across the stars. For the first time in decades, we weren't just surviving, we were taking the fight to the Veil. The aftermath of the battle was sobering. The Forge's hull bore the scars of relentless assaults, and every deck told a story of heroism and sacrifice. Entire sections had been torn apart by Veil weapons, and the once gleaming corridors were now marked by scorch marks and makeshift repairs. But despite the losses, the Forge stood tall. Every surviving crew member wore the weight of the battle with pride. Our victory had done more than just cripple a Veil fleet, it had sent a message. Across the galaxy, whispers of the Forge's defiance grew louder. Human colonies, resistance cells, and even long-dormant enclaves of survivors began to emerge from the shadows. They sent messages of support, offers to join the fight, and supplies desperately needed for our growing armada. The Forge was no longer just a warship, it was a beacon of hope, a living legend that inspired those who had long given up. With new allies came new challenges. Integrating fleets of battered ships into a cohesive fighting force was no easy task. Each vessel had its own quirks, its own history of survival against impossible odds. But Admiral Rowe was relentless in her vision. She worked day and night to forge this patchwork of humanity into a single, unstoppable force. The Phoenix Armada wasn't just a collection of ships, it was a testament to the strength of the human spirit. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything. The scientists and engineers aboard the Forge, working tirelessly with the fragments of Veil technology we had salvaged, unlocked a secret that had eluded us for years, the key to disrupting the Veil's neural command network. This network, the backbone of their coordination and tactical superiority, was what allowed them to operate with such unerring precision. If we could sever it, we could turn the tide of the war. The operation to deploy this weapon was codenamed Eclipse. It was the riskiest move we had ever attempted. The Forge would lead a strike deep into Veil-controlled territory, targeting the central nexus of their command network. If successful, it would cripple their ability to coordinate their fleets, giving humanity the opening we needed to push them back. The journey to the nexus was fraught with peril. Veil patrols dogged us at every turn, and each jump into hyperspace felt like a gamble. But we pressed on, driven by the knowledge that this was our chance to change the course of the war. When we finally reached the Nexus, a massive construct floating in the void, it was like staring into the heart of the enemy. The battle that followed was the fiercest we had ever faced. The Forge's weapons blazed, its shields flickering as wave after wave of Veil ships tried to stop us. Every person aboard fought like their life depended on it, because it did. When the final shot was fired and the Veil Nexus erupted in a cascade of light and debris, a cheer erupted across the comms. We had done the impossible. The Veil were broken, their unity shattered. Humanity had not just survived, we had become legends. The Forge, scarred and battered, continued its journey, leading the charge into a new chapter of human history. We were no longer orphans of the stars. We were their masters,